Yeah, your book's names, please. Mhm. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for welcoming me, your state and village. Very nice to be here. And on an auspicious occasion of the Govardhana Puja, Tigiraj Govardhana Maharaj Ji. So we'll speak a little bit about that. Govardhana Leela, significant Leela. And I want to do so by uh, going through in Bhagavad Gita. It will make sense if we go forward to, and we will enter through into the Lord and Leela from the Gita's 66th verse of the 18th chapter, which is very famous. You know it? Sarvadharma Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshayashyami Mahasucha. That's the conclusion of the Gita. Krishna tells us Mahasucha, don't worry. Which is what he says at the beginning of his speech to Arjuna, also in the second chapter. But relative to the discussion and the event, the the text tells us that to give up something and to accept something else in its stead, apparently, ostensibly, and that is sarvadharman pratyaja. So uh, he begins with what should be given up, and that is the dharma marg, the karma marg, varnashram, and by extension also gyan, sarvadharma pratyaja. The dharma marg, karma marg, it is three features of it are what are called paritti, in pursuit of acquisition, legalized taking, if you will, with the thought that by acquiring I'll become more. So the idea is that if you do that in a legal way, by paying for it through sacrifice and religious observance and so on and so forth, um, in accordance with the scriptural injunctions, ritualistic life, and so on, that you come to the third feature, which is kind of starts to step outside of the varnashram. Therefore, as I often say, it's about, excuse me, dharma, karma, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. That was quiet. With the pursuit of moksha, means we're moving away from the outer world into the inner world, and stepping away from dharma and acquisition, from pravriti to nivritti, from acquisition to the idea uh, that less is more, right? So when Krishna says sarva dharma prityaja, he means that I'm suggesting to you, Arjun, that you give up karma marg and you give up the gyan marg also, karma and gyan. But relative more so to our discussion is the giving up the karma marg, which involves the worship of so many devas. Uh, there are said to be 33 million gods in Hinduism. Of course, these are all thought to be powerful features of nature personified, or as we were hearing this morning in our discussion, the idea that there's consciousness behind all of the movements of the world. The forms that we find in the material world arise out of consciousness, just like a house. Who was it was telling me? You bought a house, you're building a house, right? And Chaitanya Lila. Chaitanya Lila is building a house with her good husband and family. So those are basic elements: water and fire and stone and wood and so on and so forth. But they're taking shape because consciousness has um, expressed itself in relation to matter. So the whole world takes shape, right? As Krishna says in the Gita, that tasam brahma mahadhyoni aham bija pradapita. The womb, the yoni of material nature, I impregnate the seed that is all the jivas, and then the whole thing starts to take shape. We should consider this then in relation to the idea of spiritual form, as opposed to a formless idea of spirituality. If consciousness, the idea is um, investing itself in matter causes it to take shape. If consciousness should invest itself, within the realm of consciousness, then why not forms of consciousness, right? But somewhere kind of in between are the devas. They're actually forms of matter, bodies of the devas, subtle matter, but they are also empowered positions. We call Daiva controlling influences of the world. They're, in a sense, they're partial manifestations of Krishna. So when he says, Sarvadharman Parityajya, we should give up worship of the gods, then the positive, he says, Mam Ekam Sharanam Raja. And you should come to me, take shelter of me exclusively. Mam Ekam, me alone. Now, of course, properly understood, we're not neglecting the devas because the idea is that they are all, as I'm saying, manifestations of Krishna, powers of Krishna, and empowered positions, if you will, that one can hold. And if Krishna is pleased, then they are pleased. Therefore, Bhagavatam tells us what? It says that regard to Dharma, samsiddhir haritoshanam, the siddhi, the perfection of Dharma, samsiddhir haritoshanam, is haritoshanam. Haritoshanam means the pleasure of Hari. If Krishna is pleased, everything is perfect. That is righteous, right? So while he is dismissing, in one sense, the Varnashram system, he's really speaking about its fulfillment, even beyond where, in a very very general sense, points to, if you will. It points to moksha quietly, and this is in the prem prayojan of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Moksha is included in that. We don't refer to it as moksha, but it is a liberated status. All the other Vaishnav schools refer to their goal of life as moksha, and there are different forms of moksha. And all the forms of moksha, as understood from the other Vaishnav schools, are, of course, devotional statuses residing in Vaikuntha. But praying is a special word that the Gaudiyas have claimed, and rightfully so, to describe their goal. Therefore, Panchama Purushartha, or Prema Pumartha Mahan, it's the fifth goal of life, right? So Krishna wants to bring us to that idea here in this verse, and so he emphasizes taking shelter of himself alone. Now, this is, of course, a very famous verse of the Gita, so there are different interpretations of it. And as much as those different interpretations result in the interpreter's saintliness, then we can appreciate that another nuanced perspective drawn from the text, right? But all of the Vaishnav schools, which are the uh, majority schools of Vedanta, they all agree that this verse underscores Sharanagati. Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. Sharanagati. Now they have different perspectives on that. For example, the idea that Sharanagati is a means other than bhakti, than the yoga of bhakti, by which one can attain the same goal as one can through the path of bhakti. That would be a Sri Vaishnav perspective. Um, it it opens the possibility and the opportunity to attain Vaishnav liberation to anyone and everyone. Whereas in that school, Bhakti Yoga is thought of it a little bit differently than we think of it. The height, the farthest, the highest reach of Bhakti is emphasized, but not its generosity. In our school, reach is high, it's post-liberated, and it extends to anyone and everyone. The Ramanujas, they don't want to disagree with that, but they divided Bhakti Yoga and then Sharanagati, who just surrender, wherever, whatever your position is in Varnashram, the caste system, whatever your qualities or lack of them may be, so forth. Whereas in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, we also understand this verse to be emphasizing Sharanagati, but we understand Sharanagati to be, as Rupa Goswami has explained in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, a limb of the body, an anga of the angi of sadhana bhakti. But at the same time, in our particular paribar, coming from Bhakti Vinod Thakur, it is an anga of bhakti that has been emphasized. Thakur Bhakti Vinod wrote a whole series of songs, a number of songs pertaining to each of the six limbs of Sharanagati. Anukulasa Sankalpa Pratikulasa Vardhana. Rakshikshatri Vishvashvo Bhupkritre Varanam Tata. Atmaniche Pakalpam Ye Sadvidha Sharanagati. Sadvidha, sixfold. So he wrote several songs for Anukul, Pratikul, Bhupkritre Varanam Tata, and so forth. Of these, or I should say, following that lead, if you will, Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj composed a book entitled Prapanna Jivanamrita. I was graciously given a copy of that book by my godbrother Bhakti Govardhana Sridhar Maharaj, which was Prabhupada's copy, and Prabhupada had written his name on it twice. His sister Pishima Bhavatarini paid for the publication of that book. Unfortunately, I was keeping it in the library and Vrindavan was stolen by, along with so many other books. And lucky thief, I guess. But an important book. Also going through the different limbs of Sharanagati, the six limbs, and taking verses from different shastras that illustrated these verses or these limbs. And he was very much like to emphasize that this book in itself was sufficient, the only book you needed if you could apply yourself, which is which brings us to a beautiful idea that has been proposed or posited by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I think it's unique to him, which is that the Shraddha, faith, divine faith, conviction that we that enables us to to tread the path. Is faith is kind of abstract in a sense. I had a question the other day. What is faith? How you know, how do you how do you make it more tangible and so forth? And of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has done that by way of um, connecting Sharanagati with Shraddha. Sharanagati is the outer, tangible, visible expression of that which we call Shraddha. So this means that Shraddha, faith, faith in the modern world is often thought to be, well, you couldn't reason about it, so you just came up with something. But of course, that's the basic idea, popular idea uh, in philosophy, but in science. But of course, that just fails to acknowledge that even, for example, in science, there the scientific perspective and the philosophy that derives from that or the data collected there is based on certain premises to begin with, right? There's certain belief, faith in certain premises, and then we go from there. So you can't get around. Therefore, the Gita says, and appropriately so, Shraddhayam Purusha, person is or her faith. And faith, in Srila Maharaj's language, was the animating, as this Gita verse is saying, the animating principle in life. He used to say, by contrast, suspicion leads to suspension. So if we're suspicious, then our animation is suspended. We cannot go forward, if you will. Faith is thought to be virtuous. It's actually a manifestation of sattva guna, even though there are different kinds of faith. Faith in motive, passion, ignorance, goodness, and transcendental faith. Still, in an overarching sense, it's it can be identified with goodness. People say, well, at least he believes in something. Right? If you don't, if you lack conviction, then what do? You don't do anything. If you don't do anything, then what is the value of your life, right? So again, it's the animating principle, and and it the idea is that while reason, by reason we can know about something, but um, not to the extent that we can by the faith or the conviction that causes us to move, and by which we can know comprehensive. I believe the Latin word for faith or belief would be credo. I believe, or dane maybe. It means the giving of one's heart. So you can understand. So Bhaktivinoda very beautifully in Vaishnavism has echoed that, if you will, that or vice versa, um, that that faith is a way of knowing by way of giving ourselves, not sitting on the fence and analyzing. We can know something. You can know everything about the properties of an apple by analyzing it, but if you just taste it, you really understood it. Without tasting it, you have not understood it, right? So, um, so faith and Sharanagati. Sharanagati, the outer expression of of Shraddha. In the center, the Swarup Lakshan, the principal characteristics of the Sharanagati are Gopatre Varanamutata and Rakshikshati Vishvashva. These are two of the six limbs of Sharanagati. Um, Sometimes one is underscored, sometimes the other is underscored, um, uh, speaking of them both as the principal characteristics that others then serve and follow. And they are to, in English, to accept Krishna as one's protector, to accept Krishna as one's maintainer. So um, this means rather than the gods and the goddesses, Krishna only. But if we take it a step further, as we should, as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we will look at the verse to say, "Me only, me, Krishna, Swayam Bhagavan." Gaudiya Vaishnavas, of course, we revere all the devas and devis, all the gods and goddesses. We worship Narayan. We worship Narasimha, the gopis. They paid their obeisances to Narayan, right? Rasa Leela, when Krishna disappeared and they went looking for him, then he appeared as Narayan. And they paid their pranams to him and said, "You can tell us which way did he go, Krishna?" In the home of Nanda Baba, then there's a very nice puja for Bhagavan Narasimha. He's the presiding deity of the household of Nanda Maharaj. Madhumangal is the pujari. So Madhumangal, Nanda Maharaj, Madhumangal, the worshipper he worships Narasimha. He loves Krishna as his friend, and fraternal love, right? So, and on down, we respect the gods and so on and so forth. This is the idea of Swayam Bhagavan. All the senses of divinity, all manifestations of divinity are found in him. So, in light of that, then Pujapachita Maharaj gave, I think, a very beautiful, charming Gaudiya explanation of this verse. He took the word braja, which means it's a verb here, which means to go or to come. So go to Krishna, come to Krishna. Mame comes sharanam braja. Come to me and surrender to me, take shelter of me alone. But in Sanskrit, like in other languages, words have different meanings. The same word may have different meanings. And obviously, brudge has a certain meaning to it that when you hear it, you will think, oh, rather than the verb, in Sridhar Maharaj's mind, he heard brudge. And his mind went to Vrindavan. And he reasoned, Krishna's mind also went to Vrindavan. That's why the Bhagavad Gita ended here. When he heard the word brudge, that came out of his mouth, this is like an echo, right? It's called dhvani, a suggestive meaning. So he heard the word brudge, his mind went there, and he mumbled a few more verses. Whoever reads this, teaches this, is dear to me, and he was done. Retired. His mind had gone to brunch, and so there we should go to brunch from here. Bhagavad Gita is the civilization, probably used to call it, of the soul, of the spiritual intelligence. It's a book about spiritualizing one's intelligence in one sense. Tesham satati yuktanam bhajitam pritipurvakam dadami buddhiyogam. And Gita and Bhagavad, which I like to refer to as the theological sequel to the Gita, is, as in Prabhupada's words, was the civilization of what did he say? The book for spiritual intelligence and the book for spiritual life, something like that. So if you use your intelligence properly, then you can come to the Bhagavad, which begins right where the Gita leaves off, where the Gita says, Sarva Dharma Pratyaja, Bhagavatam says, Dharma Prajita Kaita Uttara. The same thing. Dharma, this book now is dispensing with other religious ideas and exclusively focusing on this. Dharma Prajitakaita Gotra Paramo Nirmat Saranam Satam Vedyam Vastavamatra Astu Shivadam Tapatrayam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kimbab. Sadhyo hridaya marudyatetra, kitibihi sustuksha. Just listen to this, he said. Listening to this, all the miseries of material life would be overcome easily, and Krishna would be rested actually within your heart. Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. And there, of course, in the text of the Bhagavatam, then we find this idea of Sharanagati beautifully played out in the Govardhana Lila. It's a complex Lila, so many, many other things can be drawn from that. But this principle of Sharanagati, this is the kind of the doorway, if you will, the door, the threshold to entering into trans psychological emotions, actual spiritual life, bhakti proper, or it's the stage, the dramatic stage, as I often say, on which the drama of Krishna Lila will appear. Sadhana bhakti is all about erecting this stage of Sharanagati. This is its focus. Therefore, our mantras in the Diksha mantras that are relevant to sadhana bhakti and reach their efficacy upon attaining bhava, whereas Krishna Nam, its efficacy continues onward. They are the Diksha mantras. They're made of Krishna's names, but they're all in the dative case, which means to you, I give swaha, 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 sacrifice, surrender, the growing the culture of faith and Sharanagati. This is all the prayers. You can find two divisions of prayers from our acharyas. Prayers for sadhana, they're all about surrender. Spoken about in different ways, which includes controlling the mind, controlling the senses, overcoming material desires, and so forth. And then prayers in bhava, they are characterized by longing. Now, there's obviously some little overlapping, a little longing in sadhana bhakti, and those in bhava bhakti are sharanagatas plus, right? So we can erect this stage, dramatic stage in the heart, then you can say, as I often say, well, then we'll have the drama of Krishna Lila coming to a theater near you very soon, very soon. This is what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur meant when he used to say, first deserve, then desire. If you want to go to India, well, there's a few things you have to get in order. Right? You have to get time off from work, you have to get a passport, you have to get a visa, you have to get the money. Only then can you go there and get dysentery. You can't get it by you can't get it by just going to the travel shop and looking at I want to go to India. I want to go to India. So if you want to get the kind of the madness, the disease, the madness, what does the Kavi Rajpa say? Goswami say, he says, Krishna Premera Bhutta Charita. The wonderful characteristic of Krishna praying is that Bhaya Bisha Jala Hoy Bitarayan Krishna Premer Adbhuta Charit. Bhaya Bisha Jala Hoy. On the outside, it looks like you got dysentery or something. It looks like you look in bad shape. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu weeping, falling over, unable to speak, steeped in bhava, and it looks undesirable. Krishna says, Bhaya Bicha Jala. On the outside, it looks like you must have taken poison or something. But Bitare Anandamoy. On the inside, it looks, it's full of ananda. This is the wonderful Adbhuta Charit. Adbhuta Charit, the wonderful characteristic of prema. It's hiding itself, in one sense. It's hiding itself. It's a very special affair. And to understand, therefore, Bhagavatam says, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. What is the verse? Nasta Prayeshu Vajreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Utamashloki Bhaktir Bhavati Naeshtiki. When you invested your body and your mind, your senses and your mind And then also your intellect. All this is a hierarchy, right? Of your material self entirely in bhakti. Then it looks disconcerting, even in this stage, at least on the outside. People will, may not find it so attractive on the surface. You have to look underneath the surface. So the Bhagavatam implores us study this book very carefully. It's a little easy to, it could be misunderstood, right? And that means with good guidance. We should hear these about these leelas. This is uh, uh, we cannot get rati from poetry. That's true. Not bhakti, bhakti rasa or spiritual rati. Rasa is the soul of material poetry, but not by just reciting poems, writing them. Can you get Krishna rasa or Krishna rati? But if you hear the attempt of great souls who have experience, who try to put it into words, even though, therefore, Bhagavatam says what about that? What does it say? Oh, in the first canto. Um, uh, Creation. What is the word for creation? Hmm? Krishna, and then there's another word. When the Bhagavatam says about itself, this book is another creation. Hmm. I love the verse. Learned it when I was a young brahmachari. I can't remember it now. Uh, uh, but he says, this book, this text, it's another creation altogether. And he's speaking with such urgency there. Such urgency. You should hear this. And the text advises us in this verse. And even if there's some discrepancy here in the grammar or something, that should not be considered. Prabhupada used to compare it to like someone calling out, the house is on fire, and you cannot speak the language of the people next door, but somehow he's able to convey the message. The text is feeling such urgency, like to share itself, and knowing its limitation to be able to do so, given the adhikar of the audience and so forth. So, such a nice verse. What is it? Yatad visargo janatag yasmin pratishlokam abhadavati. Manyantasya vishwankitani. Chinvanti gayanti. Yeah, very beautiful. Just try to hear that. So this is poetry. Uttama shloka is described. Putting Krishna into poetry is, as I often say, a language that extends the possibilities that we feel we should be able to move beyond. The whole of material existence, human life, is trying to is consists largely of celebrating the moments, the seconds that we exceed what was previously thought to be the limitations. We could not only go so fast, we could only go so far. We could only know so much. And when we go beyond that, those moments are celebrated. If the basketball goes through the hoop without touching the rim, okay, it's small things, but this is what we celebrate. If you run the mile a tenth of a second faster, you get a gold medal in the newspapers. If you've gone to beyond the moon, to the Mars, or wherever it may be, or in the ocean. So we sense as human beings that there is more to life than what meets the eye and the mind. There are greater possibilities. The animals don't think like that, as far as we know. The birds don't think like that. The fish don't think like that. Fish don't think, if only I could fly in the sky like those seagulls. The seagulls don't think to go to the bottom of the ocean. They just stop on the top and eat fish. but humans, they want to go to the bottom of the ocean. They want to go to the top of the sky, into space. They feel that they should not be limited. Even in the face of limitations, daily, consistently. Human life marches on, trying to transcend the limits that were set in stone previously. And of course, there may be different ways to think about this, but our way is good, as good as any, if not better. And that is that the self does not have such limitations. It transcends the limits of time and space itself. Time and space are not the fundamentals of realities. Consciousness is. And we are of that nature. And so that's coming to the fore in human life. Self-reflection is prominent. It should be. And so poetry, therefore, is a language that extends the, as I often say, in the poetry, the moon, let's put it like this, mountains can have wings, right? And fly across the sky, and there's no problem there. And they lived happily ever after. So the movie goes, right? And they lived happily ever after. So this realm, then, the realm of the self, even the realm of the self, there's Atma Vritti. Atma Vritti, Gopal Tapani says, Atma Vritti, Prakashanam. Krishna reveals the function of the self, the inherent swabhav of the self. We are of the nature of consciousness. Krishna is of the nature of consciousness. So our sadhus, our acharyas, they have very much, of course, they write in prose, but also much in poetry, and particularly to describe the Leela. The Leela is described in poetry, and this is a suitable language, trying to speak about that which transcends the limits of everyday life. So if we want to enter into the Govardhana Leela, where is this Leela? We heard a Leela was about some thousands of years ago in India, in a village, but it's really a village that in the time in India hardly anybody knew about. Even in Mathura, they don't know much about Krishna. Maybe a few Brahmanis who are making garlands, getting them from the flower growers, who then speak about that rustic, coward boy, Krishna, who's captured everyone's attention. They become attracted. But typically in Mathura, they're busy with metropolitan life, right? Of course, Krishna comes there as Mathuresh Krishna. That's another thing. But Braj Krishna in the village, this is a relatively unknown outback place. It's extremely rural, and all the modern conveniences and ways of communication and so forth, the ideas, they're not readily available there. So, okay, 5,000 years ago, a boy lifted a hill there. Only a few people saw it. They're village people. But where is it? This Prakat Lila, what we know about this Prakat Lila, we know from Bhagavad, right? And what does the Bhagavad say about the Prakat Lila? It says that Krishna came and left. Krishne Swadhamo Pakate Dharma Jnana Nivisaha Kalo Nasta Vishamesha Purana Kurunoditaha. Right? Bhagavatam says, Krishna's Leela has left. What will we do now? Oh, it continues on in the text itself. The text itself is the extension of the Prakat Leela. So if you want to enter into the Prakat Leela, we're told you have to enter the Prakat Leela to go to the Aprakat Leela. Hmm? How will you do that? This Bhagavatam is a portal. Hmm? This is the samadhi of Vyas. He was told, samadhi nanusmrita vichishtitam. Bernard, you're qualified. Sit in samadhi. Hmm. Then rewrite this Bhagavad Purana and call it the Srimad Bhagavatam. Hmm. So when we speak about the Govardhana Lila, we're speaking about the meditative experience of Vyas. How real is that? Hmm. Right? Um, if you could control your mind, you could capture your own. I'm going to capture the world, but if you could capture your own mind, you can capture the whole world. Hmm. You can capture your senses, in the sixth of which, if you will, is the mind. You can capture that. Then, what does it say? Upadeshamrita. Vacho vegam manasakoda vegam jiva vegam. Etan vegan yoga sahitadira. Sarvam apimam pridivim. The whole world becomes your students, your disciple, right? Yeah. To conquer the mind, this is such a huge uh, accomplishment compared to conquering kingdoms, dividing the states, dividing and trying to conquer whatever may be the outward attempt, right? Conquer the mind, to control the mind. So uh, with this, the self comes out, right? It's not because we have a mind we know, not because we have eyes we can see, not because we have ears we can hear. These are getting in the way of our experiencing all these things. So to go beyond the mind, to control the mind. This is may look like a small thing. Someone sitting in a cave, or maybe the case, or in the temple, but it's big. So with Bhagavatam is here. Jiva Goswami very beautifully and very very thoughtfully says how we understand the Bhagavatam. It's like a big book, and you know, it's, 18,000 verses. It's complicated. But he says, well, we'll go here to the seventh chapter of the first canto. And what do we find? Vyas reveals his mind there, what he saw, that caused him to write the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he came out of his samadhi. Narada told him, enter into samadhi, then write this. He comes out of the samadhi and he says, this is what I saw. And of course, if we look at it carefully, he says, I saw the Supreme. I saw the sun globe of the Godhead and its rays, its effulgence. And its extension, those rays beyond itself, small rays, separate. And I saw a cloud that separated the rays from the sun. And I saw the remedial measure, how to remove the cloud. Bhakti yogena manasi samyak pranayite malay pashat purusham purnam. Bhakti yogena manasi. And that is the remedial measure. This is bhakti. Bhakti yoga. Because of the material conditioned jivas, there can be sadhana, there can be abhideya, there can be prayojan. We have a role to play. There can be a path and a goal. So we should look at the Govardhana Lila in this way. Don't be troubled by how Krishna could lift a hill. How is it possible? Don't let your mind get in the way. We want to control the mind. It wants to limit. Even though we want to go beyond the limits, the mind is pushing back and limiting, right? Therefore, they say if you can get in just in ordinary parlance, you can get in. What do they say? Get in a groove or something like that, and You can strike everybody out or whatever may be the case. Uh, so it's a big thing you're doing. In bhakti, big thing. And 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 the poetry of Bhagavatam, we should look at it in this light. Take it seriously. It's thought to be mythological. Uh, but it has the power to dethrone, if you will, the mythical emperor of the mind itself, who's ruling over us. The mind and senses ruling over us. They can be dethroned. This is miraculous. People want to know, where's the miracles? Where's God? They don't believe in God. We say, well, if you want me to show you God, come with me. I will show you love of God. There cannot be God. There must be God if there's love of God, right? If we are investing ourselves in a particular idea and it has miraculous results, what are the results? Shabde parecha nishnatam brahmani upashamashraya, to conquer over the mind and senses is miraculous. I told a story before. I was sitting with Prabhupada, a couple others, in Hyderabad. Prabhupada was lecturing to 50,000 people, and then he took questions afterwards at night, which was rare. And one fellow asked, Prabhuji, have you performed any miracles? He said, yes, this boy has given up sex. And everybody went, Bhishma. Oh my God. Wow, that's a miracle. And they wanted to touch our feet. Very practical. This is miraculous, right? So love of God, properly understood. There we find God. You take the Govardhana Hill. If you go to Vrindavan, you'll see the Govardhana Hill, or you can see pictures of the hill, or you can have a piece of the hill, right? But that is just a place mark, a place mark for the Leela. How you approach that hill, that stone, that Srila, that picture, that will determine whether he will levitate or not. You say the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So how beautiful the beholder must be, right? That is the devotee. This is called Vaishnavism. So why we bow our head before the stone? Because the Vaishnava told us you should do that. We had faith in the Vaishnava. We found God in the Vaishnava. And he said, he's actually over here. I say he's over here. He says, I'm over there. We argue about it. This is particularly the case in Sakyarast. So we should enter into Govardhana Leela in this spirit. Right? We should understand it properly. And hearing properly and approaching with devotion, then all these possibilities. We enter in the realm of, as Prabhupada used to say, a land in which impossible is not in the lexicon. It's not found in the dictionary. All possibilities. And to go to the Leela itself, of course, you can understand how it is a good example of Sharanagati because, its early beginning is earlier on in Krishna's life when he was in his Kumar age and had a penchant for, how would you say, forbidden fruits are better than other fruits. Children have a sense like that. Cows too. I've noticed it. So, in spite of the fact that he was the son of the king of the cowherds, who had 900,000 cows, and obviously a plentiful supply of milk and milk products and so forth, assistants in the house and so on, he was apt, prone to go and steal milk and products from the neighbors. Forbidden fruits are better. There's something special about that, right? And distribute to the monkeys and so forth. And of course, the neighboring people would complain. ladies would complain. They would be charmed, but they would complain to Mother Yasoda. And she would be in denial of that, of course. You say my son is coming in your house, to steal your butter. Well, why don't you hang it, from the ceiling? Oh, we do that. He stands on the shoulder of his friends. Well, keep it in a dark place. He lights up wherever he goes. Wherever he goes, the place lights up. So these arguments went back and forth for some time, and finally, Yashoda Mai went to Nanda Baba and said, what kind of coward king are you anyway, that our son has to go to other people's houses to taste their milk, butter, and yogurt and cause a disturbance? And you've got all these cows. Why can't you produce kind of milk that will satisfy our son and keep him at home? So Nanda Maharaj arranged for a special group of cows, the best of the herd, grazed on special grasses, produced special milk. And that was the milk then that was boiling on the stove, the Damodar Leela. And Mother Yasoda was holding the child while boiling the milk because, why? This corresponded with the annual sacrifice for Indra. The cowherds had concluded that this is a ritual, a sacrifice that we've been doing for generations, and is paying tribute to the god of the rain, because with the rain we get grass. With the grass, the cows are fed, and this is our livelihood. So we pay tribute to the god. We depend on him. So, because this was taking place at that time, this is just when Krishna was young, all of the maid service, all the devotees of Dasya Bhakti, living in the compound of Nanda Maharaj, they're all busy with the sacrifice. And Yashoda had no nursemaid to pass her son over to, or to ask, watch the milk so it doesn't boil over. Those are the two choices, right? So she was presented with these choices as that special milk began to bubble and rise, boil to the top. What shall I do? Tend the milk or tend to my son who's suckling from my breast? She decided to put her son down and tend to the milk, which was Tadiya Seva. She's serving that which is dear to Krishna over serving Krishna. Right? It was a famous verse when Parvati asked, what is the best kind of worship of her husband? She asked of him. What did he say? Aradhanam Sarvesham Vishnu Aradhanam Param. Best worship is the worship of Vishnu. She thought, well, I'm worshiping Shiva, you. That doesn't work out very well for me. But he said, no. Tasmat Prataram Devi, Tadiyanam Samasham. However, my dear Devi, I understand your mind. Worship of that which is dear to Krishna, to Vishnu. And that is even higher than worship of Vishnu. So this is called Tadiya Seva. Vaishnava Seva. In this case, Milk Seva. So she put her son down. She tended the milk. But he, of course, as you know, Damodar Leela, he went on a rampage and broke the butter pot and so on and so forth. It's a beautiful Leela that we celebrate this time of year as well. So this happened early in Krishna's Poganda Leela, but now the Govardhana Leela is taking place just at the final part of Krishna's Poganda Leela, his boyhood Leela. And during his boyhood Leela, his Kishore sensibilities, his adolescent sensibilities, his romantic sensibilities also start to manifest. They're just starting to come out a little bit at this time. And as a young boy, then noticing for the first time, really, oh, this is a big thing that goes on every year. Now he's at an age where he pay attention to it a little bit more and think, what is it about? What are they doing, Dad? What's all this commotion? And then Father Nanda Baba, of course, explains, well, we've been doing this for generations, and this is the reasoning for that. He kind of gives a Varnashram reasoning, although he couldn't cite any verses to support to support it. Krishna challenged him. This was very charming to his father. Boy, he's got a mind. I'm seeing his mind now, and his intelligence is coming. How attractive, and he's so smart and religious. Sensibilities are there. And so, regardless of what Krishna was saying, some things of interest, none of us was just charmed by by the fact that his son would think. He was seeing this, really in a prominent way for the first time. You don't have sons, you have experience like this. He has a mind of his own. Look at that. Oh, so so he gave in, right? But of course, Krishna at the same time, he's understanding this sacrifice now, and and he remembers. Oh yeah, this is the guy. Because of him, because of him, that guy up there, Indra, my mother put me down, and then broke the pot, and then I ran away, and then she tied me up and to the mortar, and this is a very, very traumatic experience for him. He was traumatized in his youth, and so he had extra impetus, other than uh, uh, his Aishvarya coming out with a view to establish through the Bhagavad, to the Prakat Lila for all of us, who he really is, or that he is Swami Bhagavan, and that he is worthy of taking shelter of, not Indra. He will maintain us. Even if Indra throws all of his force against us, right? Krishna will easily be able to protect us. Is the idea. So this is the center of Sharanapati, and this is the center idea of the Govardhana Lila. So of course, in the context of Lila, Govardhan, aside from this Lila, of course, is very significant, plays a significant role. Gopikas in the 21st, I think, chapter of Bhagavatam, they make it clear. The perfection of the eyes is to see Krishna and Balaram and their friends, the cows, entering into Govardhan Hill. They think this is the perfection. They don't think I'd like to become a coward boy. They think I wish I had the freedom within my romantic feelings to interact with Krishna in the way that they can, without any repercussions, without people saying, "What's going on here? What are these girls doing?" This is their feeling. Right? The Govardhan provides much facility for pastimes. Key pastimes for all of us, of course, are forest pastimes, whether it be Sakibhav or Madhurya. This is a romantic comedy, and that's what it is. The type of drama, if you will. So it's a bit of a romantic. When young children, just letting adolescence, falling in love, and Krishna's got all his friends, and he's in love with all their sisters. It's a really happy little group there. And Govardhan is standing very tall, watching over, knows everything, knows all what's leaves. Krishna wants to bring some attention to Govardhan and the worship of Govardhan, by which we can know everything about Krishna's Leela. If a Radharani glancing at Govardhan says, "Oh, he is the best of the servitors," right? Best of the servitors. We love that verse from Bhagavatam when he came to Mathura and then into Vrindavan, passing Govardhan, he chanted this verse from Bhagavat, right? Different ways to understand that, of course, but in Dan Keli Lila, then Vrindadevi says, "Look at this Govardhan. He's better than Anantasesh. Anantasesh has many heads, and Govardhan has many peaks. And with all those peaks, then and in all the valleys, he's providing all types of facility for Krishna's pastimes. She is identifying Govardhan with a super Ananta, which means Baldev, who is the friend of Krishna and is Krishna and is God. He's a friend of God and he's God at the same time. Right? Vishwanath Thakur says all the hills in Vrindavan, they have fraternal love for Krishna, whether it be Varsana, Nandagram, Jiva and Brahma represented there, Vishnu, Govardhana. And as I say, standing tall with so many peaks, he knows all of the leelas, all of the pastimes. So Krishna, and of course later in Gaur Leela Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I, I was fortunate many years ago, one of my godbrothers, he before the Chaitanya Charitamrita was ever published in English, um, he had two stones from Govardhan that he acquired, and he'd heard that they were worshipable, and he read it in the Brahma Purana, which is a pretty obscure text from a Gaudiya point of view. So he brought them to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, it said in the Brahma Purana that the stones of Govardhan are worshipable, and I have two of them. This was Yashodananda Maharaj. And Prabhupada must have really chuckled inside, knowing how central the worship of Govardhan is to Gaudiya Vaishnavism and so forth. And he said, "Oh, really? Yeah. And well, if the Shastra says so, then they must be worshipable." And then he told me this. He said, "This is just after I departed ISKCON in the service of Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj. I met him, and he said." He showed me these stones and he told me the story. He said, and Prabhupada picked this one up. And then he looked at the other one. He said, I'm keeping the one he picked up and I'm giving the one he looked at to you. So that's how I got acquired the Govardhana Shila, which I highly recommend worship of all of you and who's central to our puja today. Govardhana Shila Ki Jai. So worshipable. And so in the context of the Leela course, Krishna demonstrates himself to be non-different from the hill, and and and, and Indra, of course, is brought to his senses. He comes through Brahma. He goes to Brahma. What should I do? Brahma says, "Don't ask me. I hid all of his cows. I tried to capture all of his calves and his friends for a year. I'm still trying to get over, my offense in my own mind. I offered like these fantastic prayers to him and so forth, and he didn't say anything afterwards. He just looked at me like weird, four heads. What are you doing?" So I don't know. But he recommended wisely, go to Swaragi, the Deva, the head of the Devas, the cow Devas, right? Because these are dear to the cows, she may have some way. So they went with Swaragi, she led the way. And Indra then, with the gods and some goddesses also assembled, descended on the earth at a distance. This after the whole rainstorm, and Krishna protected everyone and so forth. And then Krishna saw them, so he moved away from his friends. Said, "Let me excuse me for a minute," into a distance, because if Indra was to try to apologize in the presence of all those boys, it would have been very difficult. He wanted to give him a chance to, make it easy on him to apologize for his offense. So he did, of course, and his elephant bathed with celestial Ganges. Krishna, he was then the gods called him Govinda, Upendra, the chief of the chiefs. Indra means chief. Upendra, the chief of the chiefs. Govinda, the god of the cows. And the cows are all Vedic mantras and so forth. So the god of gods. They all gave him gifts, the different gods and goddesses. Shiva gave a bamboo flute, and some god gave golden ornaments, and Brahma gave him a nice blue lotus, and so forth. And the boys, his friends were watching from a distance. All this, said, "What's going on over there?" And then the cows, and then the gods flew off. And then the boys came and said, "Give me that flute. Let me wear that ornament," right? And they were thinking, as Sukadev said, Krita Punya Punya, Krita Punya Punya, Itam Satam Brahmasukana Bhuja, Dasyam Gatanam Brahadavatena, Mahashritena Naradakena, Sakam Vijavi Krita Punya Punya. What kind of people are these inhabitants of Braj, boys and girls of this place, this outback place, jungle place? Who are they? He who is sought after by people who are willing to walk out young men in their youth, barefooted, away from home, into the Himalayas, and perform austerities, to enter into trance, itam satam brahmasukha, to get brahmasukh. You are that, he is that brahmasukh. And dasyam gatanam paradaivat. He is the worshipable deity, Narayan, of the Vaidhi Bhaktas. And he is he is interacting with his boys like this. What kind of pious activities did they perform in how many pious places for how many yugas to have attained such a status? Interacting with them. Of course, my answer is in the modern day, look at Prabhupada's life, then you know. What is Krita Punya Punya? And we are all here because of that, right? So the boys then wore the outfits and then went on their way home. And then Krishna and Balaram said, "Oh, what happened?" Krishna explained what happened when the gods came. They gave all these things to Balaram. Said, okay, then he told the boys, "All right, take it easy. We're going home." As they entered the home, then Nanda Maharaj they start fanning Nanda Maharaj with the chamar that was given, and they're wearing a Madhu Mangal's wearing the crown and so forth. And so he's quite startled. Nanda, what happened? Where did you get all this stuff? What's this all about? How? And so, of course, Madhu Mangal quickly, the Brahminical smart fellow, he answers, well, there was a guy with 4 heads and he did this, and a guy with 5 heads did that, and a guy with eyes all over his body. And Nanda said, yeah, right, okay, sure. Where you got this stuff, but whatever. And then out of the sky came an oracle. Your son should be inaugurated as the king of the cowherds, which of course we like this idea. And so another coronation ceremony was set amongst the Brajavasis. Krishna, of course, went home. What did he do? He played the flute given by Shiva that was made by Shiva himself. He played the Kedar rag. Kedar rag. Kedar is a name for Shiva. Kedar. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's name was Kedarnath. Kedarnath. It seems that Bihari Goswami's Diksha Guru either preserved his name as Kedar or added to it Kedarnath, which would be appropriate for a Vaishnava name. Kedar means Shiva, it's the name for Shiva, and Nath means Lord of Shiva. The Kedar Raga is very interesting because it's thought to be very romantic in nature and very contemplative and devotional at the same time. So it's thought to be very ideal for bringing out Madhurya Rasa. Krishna played this, trying to attract gopis. As I said, he's just his adolescence is starting to come out. The story that he why did he use his finger only like this and close his hand? Why didn't he use his whole hand? So that without him, he could see over his hand and see Radharani and the gopis, and then he would tremble, and then the boys would hold their sticks up. Looks like it's going to fall, right? So Krishna played the flute. Kedar also means field, so he sowed a field of musical field, and the gopis put seeds in the field of their love. So it ends on a romantic note, and all the rasas are covered, if you will, in Govardhana Lila. But you have to become Sharanagata to go there. Any question? Yes.
How did the Brajavasi, how was it the Brajavasis didn't think being God?
Well, they wondered how he was able to do it. And his friend said, you know, give that to Sridham. Pass that over to Sridham. Or at least change hands so we can massage your other hand. So this is of course the real Aishvarya, Braj. Rupa Goswami has taught that Krishna is perfect in Dwarka. He's more perfect in Mathura, and he's most perfect in Vrindavan. Hmm? And he explains in Lagu Bhagavatamrita, what does it mean, most perfect? It means that in Vrindavan, he shows the full measure of sweetness. And he shows the full measure of majesty, exceeding the majesty that he shows in Dwarka or Mathura, even. And he shows the full measure of mercy. You can ask Putana about that. She knows. She will make it. She'll testify. Right? She's there. She'll testify. She'll tell you her story. And I was, and he. That's the learned Uddhava, right? Who was Krishna's counselor in Dwarka. He reasoned like this. What is that? He said, who in their right mind would take shelter of anybody other than Krishna, which is our main focus here tonight. He Putin just dressed up like a devotee with a very evil intentions in mind, and he gave her some form of Vatsalya Bhakti. Who in their right mind would take shelter of anybody else? If it's anybody else, it would be Gaur Krishna. Who brings all this to us, right? All this, such messages. So, when we say the full measure of Aishvarya is present in Vrindavan, what do we mean? Well, we could look at lifting Govardhana Hill. That's awfully majestic, right? What about the Brahmavi Mohan Lila? Doesn't get any better than that. Krishna showed that he was the source of innumerable Narayans, Shivas, Brahmas, and universes, and so forth. It's a super extraordinary manifestation of majesty in Vrindavan. But this is not the full measure of Aishvarya. What is the full measure of Aishvarya? The full measure of the Aishvarya in Vrindavan is the prem. The prem that's not diminished by the Aishvarya. Therefore, Krishna's lifting the hill, and their prem is not diminished. They're not thinking, oh my God, this he must be God. They're thinking, pass it over to Sridham. Let him hold it for a while. That is power. That is Aishvarya. That they have controlled him. See, he who has all Aishvarya is completely controlled by their love. The full measure of Aishvarya is the prem. It is the sweetness. Sweetness itself is the full measure of Aishvarya. Baladev Vidibhushan, one of the verses from the Brahma Vimohan Leela from the Brahma Stuti, he says, they have this like it's printed on the back of their head, Aishvarya. You don't see it up front, but it's there. All the Vrishvasi. This is the full measure. We are the Aishvarya. Krishna is conquered by them. So, no. But afterwards, sometimes they have to reflect. There are several instances in this where some of the elders get together with Nanda and say, what's going on here? How did your son do that? And then they start to reason, he must, he has powers. Well, it was said that he would have the power of Narayan. Narayan would do things. Sometimes it's resolved like, oh yeah, Gargamuni said that this boy sometimes Narayan will do wonderful things through him. So we should take shelter of him. Or Nanda Maharaj say, yeah, sometimes I wonder too, but then it seems like he's a god, but then gods don't complain about him not getting enough sweets or things like that. And he's yeah, right. So this is the pretty approach. Very beautiful. Yes.
Question about Jaranami in terms of sadhakas.
Yes.
As a sadhaka, our biggest struggle is either kind of surrender below our adhikar or above our adhikar. So how do we strike a healthy and balance where we continue to push the boundaries as best we can?
Well, you got to keep good association. Then the boundaries will be pushed. That and and then you have to know how to push back on good association. Also, you have to know how to push back. You have to say, yes, Guru Maharaj, I will do that. But if I do that, this might happen. Right? Present it to you for your kind consideration. So, I mean, I'm giving you, let's say, for example, in the ashram, Guru says, okay, Krishnadas, I want you to drive to Audarya, tonight. It's about 4 hours from Santa Cruz. I want you to drive and get here before Mangal Arti every morning. And then you say, yes, Guru Maharaj, I will do that. But if I may, please consider that it's very likely that I'll fall asleep while I'm driving and I may crash it. And I say, oh, well, maybe not. Come every day. So you have to be sensible. And that's, of course, in short, in great demand, a little bit of common sense. But you have to know how to respectfully push back, so that your limitations in your adhikar can become more clear. Because after all, Guru may not entirely understand your adhikar, because he or she may be very generous. One of my godbrothers, Bhavananda Maharaj, he's a big guy. And interesting thing about him is, if I may think of him at the moment, before he ever joined the mission of Prabhupada, which he joined in village in New York in the early days, when the early disciples from his brother Gargamuni, he enrolled in a college in Vrindavan, the College of Bon Maharaj, one of Prabhupada's godbrothers. He acquired some land and started a college there. You see the carryover from the previous life. So anyway, Ramananda Maharaj. And so we were in Dwarka, in the temple, and he started this dance. He was moving in a certain way like this. And Prabhupada said, I saw Ramananda, and I thought, he's got the bhav. And then I realized, oh, no, he's just dancing. So he would make generous statements. He said, yes, Tripurari Maharshi is the incarnation of book distribution. Then there was Chamal Krishna Maharaj said, you're some kind of an avatar, right? Well, I wasn't thinking quite like that. I was kind of thinking he's generous, you gave him the power to do this. So, but Prabhupada would see like that. So this is a high quality caliber devotee will see with eyes of affection, and you have to tell him, I'm not as capable as you may think, but if you ask, then he will adjust accordingly. So that's one thing to consider when I say that good association, that will encourage us to keep pushing the envelope, if you will. And if we have the right rapport, then it should be done in such a way that your adhikar becomes clear, and then you can live a happy life. It's a devotional service as a sadhaka, which it's life. Sadhaka day is a work in progress. So sometimes the senses are in touch with sense objects for the pleasure of the senses, which fosters our material identity, and sometimes they're in touch with sense objects for the pleasure of Krishna's senses, out of which our spiritual identity will arise. So it's compared to the Prakat Lila itself, where there are material elements and there are spiritual elements at the same time. So you don't want to be neurotic about it. And it's a long road, but it's a good road to be on, no matter where you are on the road. It's long, and it's a long and winding road back home to your door, to his door. and and many times I've gone there or something, and many times I've cried. Many times I've tried. I know you know the many times I've cried. So something like that. I always thought of it in those part in the song, that light, which and so yeah, it's there's this, the stage of Bhajana Kriya is Anishta Bhajana Kriya is full of ups and downs. But stay the course, stay in good association with peers, contemporaries, and as much as possible with advanced devotees and through reading and getting their association and so forth. This is there's nothing that can call our progress more than that. And if we approach that with the right mindset, as I'm saying, which is important, to communicate, then we can avoid thinking, I was told to do this, and I tried to do that, and that didn't work. And maybe there's certain questions you shouldn't ask, like, really, what do you think I should do about this? Well, it may not be entirely his field. He might or she might have some relative wisdom about it, but be reticent to share it because it might turn out the opposite. It's quite possible. So, and then to be blamed and so forth. So what can you do? So yeah, so satsanga is an art. That's an art, and I see it's not artfully engaged in, and therefore people, many devotees, unfortunately, aren't able to fully take advantage of that. Um, but there's also different angas of bhakti, ones that you might more readily find yourself able to engage in and become absorbed. And so therefore you should gravitate towards those. You should learn how to tell your own temperature, and understand that this really works for me. Uh, you know, this particular anga or combination of them. I mean, you have to be looking, you have to be living as a sadhaka. That has to be the hub of the orbit of your life. So you have to set up your life like that. I do this at this time, I chant, and nothing else. So that I get practiced. And at that time, there's not the time for any other thoughts at that time. That's not the time for any other thoughts. That's the time when you turn off the faucet of your mind, right? So you have to have a discipline in whatever situation you're in. Bhakti has the power to turn your situation into one that's favorable. That's another thing. You have to find a favorable situation. We were told by Mahaprabhu to tolerate like a tree, the tall order, right? But we're also told to find a favorable environment for our bhakti. So once an ISKCON fellow from some years back said, Maharaj, you should rejoin ISKCON. And I said, why? And he said, well, I don't know, well, you get to practice tolerance more. I said, I got plenty of things to tolerate in the situation I've created for myself. I don't need to go after it. So create a favorable environment, and even in that, there will be things you have to tolerate. Right? So don't get stuck in a particular situation. Get up and move. People say, well, what should I do? I live in Alaska or whatever. There's no devotees here. Move. Next question. So, are you a sadhaka or what? I mean, I'm not going to do it for you. So, effort on our part is required. This is about change. It's not about staying how you are. It's about changing. Changing. Radical. It's a radical lifestyle, actually. I'm not trying to fit in. What else? Yeah.
Well, I understand that Golden Hill is also an expansion for Krishna, but also Balaram and Srimati Radharani. and I was doing something I learned, and I was wondering what way it manifests.
Well, I I don't think we can look at Govardhana as Radharani, but we can say that Radharani looks at Govardhana and says, "Oh, Govardhana, he's the best servitor." Hmm. Now, someone may reason, well, the best servitor is Radharani, so he must be Radharani, but that's not exactly what she's saying there. So um, uh, let us look at Raghunath Das Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami was given a Govardhana Shila by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told him how to worship the Govardhana Shila. And this is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So he worshipped Govardhana Shila as Krishna. As Krishna. Now, he thought, Mahaprabhu has given me the Govardhana Shila, which means he's given me a place at Govardhan in the Leela. And he's given me the Gunjamala, which is a mala of like beads from the forest, a rustic kind of necklace. And Mahaprabhu used to put it on himself, and then he would bathe the deity of Govardhan with his tears. So he gave the Shila and he gave the mala to Raghunath Das. And when he received the mala, he thought, oh, I've got a place at Govardhan in the service of Radharani. So he thought like that. So it's probably best for us to, if we worship Govardhan, to worship as Raghunath Das did. Now, Das Goswami also made some beautiful poetry glorifying Govardhan, and in some verses he also glorifies Govardhan as the friend of Krishna, best friend of Krishna, the servant of Krishna. Jiva Goswami has written very beautifully about that in Gopal Champu, how all of the different items of 64 items of puja, mirror, lamp, incense, garland, bhog, all the things offered to the deity in a full Seva Puja, there are 64 items. So he really poetically described how Govardhan provides all the 64 items for Krishna and Balaram when they come on Govardhan Hill. Um, caves as a bed to rest in, flowers, birds singing, and so on and so forth. If you look at the Govardhan through those eyes, in the context of doing Govardhan Puja, then gradually you'll start to see with spiritual eyes. You cannot see with material eyes. Therefore, it said, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochana Sandasadeva Hridaishu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Guna Surupam. He has Achintya Guna Surupam. It is his inconceivable nature and qualities. So to see him as he is, the eyes have to be tinged with the salve of love. So you have to change your vision. So how will you do that? Well, the beginning is instead of seeing through your eyes, which you have to check yourself. Because if you see the deity only through your eyes, you think, well, maybe it's a stone. Right? Therefore, why, like I said earlier, why you bow down? Because you've heard with your ears. That's Krishna. That's God from a Vaishnav. So we're taught to see with our ears by hearing from Shastra Chakshu. So eyes of the scripture coming through the ears. So that means a little bit theologically and philosophically, we have to look at Govardhan. Understand that by what Vyas saw in his trance, we have to enter into the trance of samadhi to see ourselves. So how you will decorate your eyes? Well, there's a beginning to that, right? Control the mind, the senses. And the Seva Puja Archan for the deity is a powerful anga of bhakti, and of course kirtan. So that's how you're going to see. Yeah. You have to change your antakarna. What else? Yes.
So in Gopal Champu, it was saying like Madhu Panta saying Krishna spoke so many untruths, but because he's so charming and he sounded so intelligent, they all accepted what he said. And I was like, well, it doesn't sound untrue to me. Like, how he kind of tricked everyone, but to me, they sound logical. You know what I mean? Like all the karma kanda thing and the other things he was saying about Indra. Because Indra's under the law of karma, why should you?
Krishna spoke different philosophical perspectives to make his case. Mm. Um, so, Sankhya, Karma Mimamsa, maybe Nyaya, and so forth. So these were all dominant philosophical perspectives from the Indian subcontinent, right? From times gone by that the Goswamis were learned in, and argued against, drew some things from, and so forth, put together their doctrine of the Chinti Veda Veda. So, in one sense, then those perspectives unto themselves, we'll consider them untruths. We consider Vedanta the truth of the different darshans. There's some truth in Sankhya, there's some truth in Nyaya, there's some truth in the Karma Mimamsa, but as a whole, it's not the case. And you can see that now over time, over the centuries, that the dominant philosophical perspective from ancient India that is prevailed, that is Vedanta. And if you say it's yoga mixed with Vedanta, to be sure. Yoga is popular for largely for other reasons other than the brahmacharya prescribed in the Yoga Sutras as one of the angas, one of the limbs of Astanga Yoga. So, but Vedanta. So, with regard to the nature of the self, and is there a self? Nature of consciousness, and so there's nowhere that the scientific and philosophical community has turned to outside of itself more than to the East, the Orient. Maybe first they go to Buddhism and find the consciousness isn't there either. It sounds like it first, but there's no foundational substance of consciousness. And so, but in some schools of Buddhism, they're kind of saying there seems to be a substance. Go to Shankar, there's a substance, it's Brahman. Buddha say there's no room. What it says? Shankar says there's a room, but the lights are out. And we say there's a room, and we turn on the lights, and there's a party going on in there. So unto themselves. Sorry, got away from your question. So unto themselves, they could be considered untruths from that point of view.
Would you say that the fact that Krishna is separate and he's also Govardhana, that's an example of a Chinti Veda?
If Krishna is separate and he's also Govardhana.
He paid obeisances to Govardhana, who's him. He manifests as Govardhana. He was outside worshiping Govardhana as well.
Well, in a way,
Or can you give a good example of a Chinti Veda?
Yeah, I'll give you a better example in the Leela. Would be the Damodar Leela. Mother Yasoda is trying to bind Krishna, right? And she's borrowing more and more rope, 2 inches, 2 inches, so you can never bind him, right? He's not getting fatter every 2 inches. He's not growing. He's staying the same size. And all the rope in all the world could not bind him up. So he is outside of the world. The world is inside of him. And he's inside the world. He's inside the world. She's trying to capture him with the world, but he's beyond. This is called, in modern theology, we call it panentheism. Panentheism, not pantheism, but panentheism. God in the world in God. So there is God. And Krishna says it in the Gita. What does he say in maybe the 9th chapter?
All beings are in me, but I'm not in them.
I am in them, they're not in them. You see my mystic Shakti, power. That's the Chinti Veda Veda. That's an example from the Leela. So Mahaprabhu he would see the Leela and he'd say, this is the big debate. Is it one or is it difference? Is it imminent or transcendent? Upanishad say this one time, say that another time. How are we going to deal with all that? He just said, well, we know what to think about it. It's both. We see it in the Leela, both at the same time. And that's a chintya. Other terms are used. Apritak siddhi, Ramanuja, Vishesh, and Madhva. They're similar ideas because they're Vaishnavas. What else? Yes.
Things I found also a little at first glance about the Leela that is that initially Krishna tells them to worship the hill, and then when what he told them to do brings misfortune upon them, they come to him. It's not like I would think that you'd go, why did you tell us to do that? So is this also because of the frame? It's just like you don't have anywhere else. It's just illogical. They just go to.
Well, I haven't thought about that, but let's do so for a moment. Yeah, so what you're saying is he told them to worship the hill, and they worshiped the hill, and they were very happy doing that. They were very satisfied. And he showed himself to be the hill at that time also, right? He showed himself to be not different, which is astounding to them. Astounding, and then they had a reason about it also, as we spoke earlier, right? And then Indra's wrath came. So they weren't troubled by it at all because then he lifted the hill, right? So they didn't really experience any difficulty from it. It did appear, potentially very dangerous, but they were protected the whole time. So he wanted to show that he is the protector of everyone, which is the central, limb of Sharanagati, that he's the protector, that he's the maintainer. He's showing that to us, and at the expense of his Vrajbasis, any confusion that might arise. You're thinking, well, if he told them to worship the hill, and they worshiped the hill, but then problems came.
Yeah, initially, the first times I heard the Leela, it seemed like just surprising that they would initially go to Krishna for shelter when the rains are coming down, before he was. And I would think that they would, in an ordinary scenario.
Why did what?
Why did you tell us to do that?
Worship the hill?
Yeah.
Well, he did it for philosophical reasons, obviously.
Yeah.
To show them, to demonstrate to them that he was actually the protector, that he's the Lord of Braj in the whole world. He showed it to them. And he demonstrated the position of Indra is superior to him. So, good lesson. Yes.
I was thinking in this regard, this was you complained to Nanda Maharaj. He's a leader.
Yeah.
The whole quickly changes, like we were doing this for so many years, 4 generations. Now because your kid told you to do something else, you completely change everything. And now we are in this calamity. So, but nobody does it. Evidence in Bhagavad. Upset with Nanda Maharaj because of the difficulty.
It's part of the Leela that there would be some difficulties. There are difficulties in the world. Part of the Leela. Union, there's separation, there's tragedy, and it enables Krishna to be a hero. So, for Krishna to be a hero, sometimes there have to be adverse circumstances. And then the quality of his heroism serves as an udipana for their bhava. Yes, you got a further question?
I was in regard you thought of the word of those describing because of items material dharmas. But one of the benedictions of engagement in Govardhana Puja is that won't be bitten by a snake. It sounds like very material,
Yeah.
very materialistic perception on what we are doing with the goal which comes from it. And I was just wondering if you could elaborate.
Yeah, there are statements like that that you can find not as often in the Bhagavatam, but in other Puranas and other texts and so forth. But they appear sometimes in the Bhagavatam, and that's an example. But they serve as motivators for people whose motivation, who by which certain people who otherwise would not be motivated will be motivated. So the Puranic texts they sometimes uh, encourage us, if you will, out of fear or out of prospect, what you will get, what you will avoid. These are lower motives, obviously, but some people are only have adhikar to be motivated by such rather than out of duty. I should do it, even though as a result of it, I may lose my life. I will do it anyway. That's a high motive, right? So most people are motivated by fear or by some prospect of material gain that I will get. So the texts do try to bring those people in and making statements like that at times, whether they're true or not. That's another thing. But that's the purpose. And of course, then beyond what the Bhagavatam tries to do, primarily and principally, is to motivate us by the charm of Krishna, by speaking about Krishna Lila in a way that no other texts do. I mean, you can read the Vishnu Purana or the Harivamsa Purana or the Padma Purana, the Leelas of Krishna are described there, but they're just like, this one happened, this is the story. But the Bhagavatam is bringing out the aesthetic experience of it, and the commentators that much more. Vyasa Veti, Naveti. Vyasa may know the implication, he may not. Rupa Goswami knows. He's the player in the Leela. Sanatana Goswami knows, Jiva Goswami knows. So their commentaries are bringing out what's packed into the text, and that's, excuse me, the aesthetic experience of the human. Excuse me, we may be drawn in, and so the human-like leelas of Krishna, they're very powerful in this. I'm going to explain like this because we're humans, and his human-like leela enables us to bond with him emotionally through all of the whole gambit of our emotions, right? We know, oh, I know what that's like. I did that with my child. I did it with my friend. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's doing that now. That causes a connection, a bond. We're emotional beings, so it's a very powerful sadhana, if you will, to hear the Bhagavatam. The way it enables you to bond, even without philosophical acumen, with Krishna. Maybe a little harder for Western with a different background. If you're brought up in India, and this is a whole culture and so forth, and here's your God, and this is what he's doing, and he's just like us, almost. He's different, but he's like us too. Then you naturally bond with him with the whole range of your emotions. It's a powerful sadhana. You see, you can't do that by meditation. Connect that by doing away with all your emotions and meditating on Brahman. It's much less powerful and compelling of a methodology. In Christianity, they kind of get you by guilt. He died on the cross, for God's sake. You should worship him, don't you? And you feel guilty, and they do, and then they make a movie about it, whatever that movie was. Mel Gibson. Yeah. So this is what's happening, See, and this all of you are caught by this. Prabhupada used to say, read the first 9 cantos, then the 10th canto. And Prabhupada, he gave us the Krishna book before he came out with the second canto. Well, you have to have a little taste of what it's all about, to go on, right? So, and then you look and see, and you ask the devotees, Prabhupada's disciples, for example, in his time. I was told, for example, by one devotee, not all devotees go to Goloka, most of them go to Vaikuntha. I wept when I heard that. How can that be possible? I went before the deities, and they told me it's not true. in the market. Okay. So he was confused, but but he didn't want to go there either. So they have an affinity for it, for Goloka, for the Vrindavan pastimes. This is very powerful. This is the whole logic of Rag Bhakti, because the devotees of Braj, they have completely purchased Krishna. Sridham, Sudam, Lalita, Vishaka, Rupamanjari. Krishna's completely purchased by Yasoda, Nanda. If you would like to be like them, that's what you want to be like. Because most people are worshiping God for other reasons, for material things, to get away from things, right? Become immortal, because he's God. I should worship him. That's not how the Brajbasis are worshiping Krishna. So if you want to be like that, you can imagine you get Krishna's attention. You want to be like them. Not too many people interested in that. Of course, you look deeply at it. You have to understand the top of it. It's not a cheap thing. Bhaje Shvetadipam tamaham lokam yatiyam. Bhaje Shvetadipam tamaham manusham sahasreshu kaschin yatate siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam veti sarvata. Narayana Parayana. Both. It's not a cheap thing, but it's attractive. How can I be attracted to something? I'm attracted to it, but I find that it's not cheap. It's very costly. It's very expensive. Maybe I shouldn't be attracted, but I am attracted. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. Regardless of your lack of qualification, you become attracted. This is the grounding, you see, for lifetimes. This is the ground deal for this ideal. And you can't settle for anything else. I offer you Vaikuntha today. Will you take it? Oh. Right? See, so keep hearing Krishna Leela, then you will say no. If you hear about Vaikuntha, it sounds interesting, but it's not what I'm interested in. It will take you next. You can go quickly. In this life, you can go. It's possible. Die and go to Vaikuntha. Take it. Maybe Krishna doesn't really exist. But Vaikuntha, they don't know about Goloka. Yeah? But if you keep hearing from saintly persons, from Gaudiya Sampradaya, then you cannot give this up. Because you've already, emotionally, you've bound. You've made a bind. Very powerful. Harikatha ki jai. Govardhana Leela ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanand. Kinchikopatarubhyascha Kripasandhivya Patitanam
I would get it. So, I was getting really restless.
Yeah.
Oh, so